All right, right next to me today is Miss Delight Oliver from the Fisheries Department. Delight, I understand you were on our beautiful ocean front. You got to see some wonderful species of whale and the different cetaceans. I hope I got to spell it correctly, cetaceans.
Cetaceans, yes.
Could you tell us a bit about, that exercise, what it was all about?
Sure. So the fishery services within the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, Fisheries, Rural Transformation, Industry and Labour has been in cooperation with an NGO called the Caribbean Cetacean Society. And this NGO is based in Martinique, but it operates across the Caribbean. So I was involved in one of the scientific expeditions, which happened this month gone in April. And we spent 15 days, so approximately 2 weeks, out at sea, taking observations of the different types of cetaceans that we have in our waters. So when we say cetaceans, we mean whales and dolphins. We don't have any porpoises, even though the fishermen like to say porpoise. We actually don't have any species of porpoises in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But we were looking for whales and dolphins primarily.
Awesome. In terms of the different species you saw during that short period of time, tell us a bit about them.
So we saw a lot. We saw 9 species between the waters of St. Lucia and Grenada. In the southern leg of the expedition, which takes place from St. Lucia to Grenada, including St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we saw 9 species, which is quite a lot. We saw 2 species of large whales, so the humpback and the sperm whale. There were a lot of sperm whale. We also saw the melon-headed whale, which is a smaller blackfish type species. We also saw the regular blackfish that we talk about, that's the pilot whale. Dwarf sperm whale, which is sometimes referred to as koja, and that species is very special because it's one of the least studied and least known about species, and we saw quite a lot of them, and they seem to really love our waters in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So we got a lot of data on those, as well as the dolphins. So we got Fraser dolphins and pantropical spotted dolphins.
Awesome.
Oh, and also 2 species of beaked whales. So beaked whales are they're very rare because they're not very conspicuous. They don't jump or flip or anything. You just see them for a minute and then they're gone. They're very cryptic species. So it was very interesting that we got 2 species of beaked whales, very brief interactions with them, but we did get some photos and were able to identify the species. So we saw 2 species of beaked whales, which was my first time seeing them, so I was very excited.
Awesome. All right, of course, all these cetaceans, they play a very important role within the marine ecospace. Tell us a bit about their importance in our waters.
So they help to regulate the food web. A lot of them are top predators. For example, the orca and the blackfish, they eat a lot of large squid, big fishes, so they help to regulate and maintain that food chain. Also, the greater whales play a very important role in climate regulation. You may not think of them as, helping out climate change, but between retaining a lot of carbon in their bodies, they act as living carbon storage, but also when they poop, when they excrete, they actually nourish the phytoplankton. Phytoplankton are tiny microscopic plants that actually help to, again, absorb carbon dioxide and release oxygen into our atmosphere. So by protecting our greater whales, we're actually helping out our climate as well.
Awesome. Of course, we know that there isn't that much known about a lot of these species. We really only know about the pilot whales. Some people don't know about the orcas, and they know dolphin, the bottlenose dolphin in general.
They group all the dolphins together, yes.
Yes. In terms of your work at sea for those 15 days, do you think this is going to help create a greater understanding amongst the public of what we have in our waters and the importance we must play in terms of conserving and preserving these species?
Yes, most definitely. And I think one of the greatest benefits that we got is actually the capacity built in this research and also in identifying these species. Because like you said, a lot of persons may not know the different species and how many species we have in our waters. So from this experience and from working with the Caribbean Cetacean Society for over 4 years now, we'll be able to roll out some training coming up. So we want to train the data collectors as well as the fishers to identify these different species. And all of this is helping to better manage our cetacean fishery because like you know, we do catch blackfish and dolphins in our country, and it's very important that we manage this properly. And recently, the ministry has been able to put together some regulations, and it has been passed, it has been approved. So the public will be hearing more about these regulations shortly, and the goal of these regulations is really to make sure that our cetacean fishery is sustainably managed, that we're not taking too much and that we're taking just enough that we can have it sustained and not be to the detriment of the species.
All right, of course, these particular species, they already face challenges related to us hunting them. Are there any other challenges that they face in relation to, basically just living and trying to survive in the ocean?
Definitely, and I actually was able to observe some of these threats. So a lot of the species had scars on them from propellers, from engines of boats. They also would face issues with bycatch sometimes. Not so much with our fishery, but with the larger longline offshore fisheries. They do sometimes get tangled up in those fishing nets. And of course, with overfishing, their food stock is also in decline. So they do face a lot of threats, not just from us, but also naturally as well. There are predators. So for example, the very top predator, the orca, they do hunt other species of cetaceans. So they do take, the smaller dolphins and also some of the smaller whales. So yeah, they face a lot of threats.
Okay, in terms of our management with this large group of species, the cetaceans, do you think maybe in the future more regulations can be put in place to maybe reduce the volume of one particular species that we catch, or maybe encourage another one which may seem to be thriving a bit better?
That's a very good question, Bavin. So this is just the beginning of managing the fishery. There's of course opportunity for new and better regulations as the science improves. And that is why it's so important that we have these cooperation projects with different agencies doing this research, because it's very important that we know what we have in our waters so that we can better manage it.
Of course, it was a scientific venture. Of course, there's bits of data that you would have collected, and of course, you have your daily day-to-day routine. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. So we begin the research day at 6 a.m. So at 6 a.m., 2 observers are at the front of the vessel and they're looking for any signs of cetaceans. This could be blows, it could be jumping, it could just be a slight dorsal fin. So you're paying very close attention from 0 degrees to 90 degrees and looking for any signs of this activity on both sides of the vessel. When you do see any activity, we approach in a very cautious way, so not to chase them or to harass them. And then the goal is to get photographs. And these photographs are used for photo identification. So each whale on the edge of the tail has a fingerprint region, which is unique to each individual whale. So by getting that photograph over different times of the year, for example, you could actually track where an individual is moving and thereby where a pod is moving. With the dolphins now, it's not their tails, but their dorsal fin. So that top fin, sometimes it has very distinct scars or marks, and by getting that photograph of the individual, you can actually tell where that group is moving. So it's very fascinating information. Besides the photo identification, there's also a towed hydrophone. So a hydrophone is basically an underwater microphone, and this hydrophone is picking up the vocalizations of the cetaceans. So different species have different sounds that they make. And by using this acoustic information, you can actually identify some of the species. Some of them, like the beaked whales I was talking about, they're very cryptic, they're very hard to see visually. But sometimes you could get their vocalizations and then you could know that they're present in this area. So by coupling those 2 bits of data, the photo identification and the vocalizations, we're able to get an idea of where the cetaceans are exactly and how they're moving through the Caribbean and their habitat usage essentially. Whilst that is being done, there's also the environmental data that's being logged. So every hour, we take note of the waves, the weather conditions, and other threats that may be around. For example, boat traffic, which could be a disturbing factor for cetaceans. So it's very intense, it's very vigorous from 6 a.m. until 6 p.m. and then afterwards until 8 p.m. sometimes we'll be up doing photo identification. So it's a lot. It's challenging, but it's very rewarding to see these different species in our waters and also to be with people from the Caribbean and do this research together. It's a very enriching experience.
All right, thank you so much, Delight, and of course, continue to do your work, which we know in the future is going to help preserve and protect these very important species.
Thank you, Bavin. That is the hope.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you.